Man, they did a great job. Good job. Let's bow our heads and pray one more time. Today, Lord, send your still, small, quiet voice to speak to our hearts. Draw us out of our shells of selfishness and fear so that we can bloom and spread your love. Amen. A long time ago in a land far away, there was a runaway, a fugitive. And he had run and run and run, and finally he got to a point where he could just run no more. He looked for a shelter, and he found a cave, and he got inside that cave, and he sat down. He was exhausted. He was discouraged. He was done. And this wasn't just a criminal. This wasn't a bad guy. This was a prophet. This was someone who'd had experiences with God that you and I would be jealous of. And he was like, God, where are you? How could you let this happen to me? I don't know if you've ever asked this question before, but he threw up his hands in the air and he said, why? And in that why, there was a challenge. And that challenge said, you come down here and tell me. I deserve some answers. Woo. So God came down. First, there was this huge firestorm. Fire came, like the whole mountain just like exploded in flames. But the prophet knew God was not in that fire. Then there was a windstorm, like a crazy tornado. I mean, huge boulders, 10 times the size of this piano, were just picked up and thrown in front of the entrance of the cave. And as he braced himself in the wind, he knew God was not in the wind. These mighty, powerful events took place right in front of him. And he was like, no, God's not there. And then he heard, you've probably heard it too, that gentle, calm, loving voice. And he knew. And he took his cloak and he put it over his face and he bowed down to the ground. The arrogance, the distress, the anger, gone. Just humble worship. A long time ago in a land far away, there was a city, a walled city, out in the middle of nowhere in Persia, kind of the eastern part of Persia, and an army had surrounded this city, and they were besieging this city. And the army was kind of like this guy in the cave. They were done. They were discouraged. They were tired. They wanted to go home. You see, this wasn't just any army. This was the army. This was Alexander the Great's army, the army that generals forever had been trying to copy. Victory and success super, super fast. I mean, these guys were awesome, and they were done. You see, they had crossed the sea, they had invaded the Persian Empire, they had fought these massive, massive battles against overwhelming odds, and they had won. They had toppled the Persian Empire. They had conquered Babylon, and now they were ready to go home. But their leader, Alexander the Great, he had a vision. And his vision was to go all the way to that far-off legendary sea on the other side of the continent. He wanted to just keep going, and this city was in their way. And he was like, all right, we're going to take this city. And he was all into it, but nobody else was. And so they had done a couple of assaults, but no one wanted to get killed for this random city out in the middle of nowhere. And the army was just really apathetic. I'll talk Adventist language. It was very Laodicea. And any good leader, when he senses apathy, he knows he's got to do something. And you can see the heart of a leader based on what that leader does when they sense apathy. So Alexander was there. He was on a hill kind of overlooking the battlefield, great vantage point, looking at the maps, talking to his men, and all of a sudden he was like, all right, And he picked up his helmet and put it on. Now, Alexander the Great's helmet had these massive, huge, white, gaudy feathers on it. And in movies today, it would look really dumb. But back then, on the battlefield, everyone knew, there's the king. And they would follow him. That's how kings led back then. Well, the good ones. So he put his helmet on, he grabbed a shield, he grabbed a sword, and he started down the path running towards this city. And the guys who were with him, his bodyguards, his family members, the companions, they were like, what's he, oh my goodness, he's going to do, and they just like grabbed some weapons and started chasing after him. And Alexander is running all by himself straight to this walled city. Every man on top of the wall sees the famous Alexander coming towards him, and they knock their bows and arrows, they get their slingshots ready. Every Greek soldier like sees Alexander run past them, and they're like, oh my goodness, he's doing this. And they start chasing him. Alexander grabs a ladder. He slams it up against the wall because they'd done previous assaults before, so there was stuff around. He gets the ladder and he starts running up this ladder. Arrows are flying, sticks or stones all over around, bouncing off his armor. He gets to the top. He jumps over and he looks back at his army and does this and jumps into the city wall, and no one can see him. One guy, all by himself in that city. Now his friends, his bodyguards, his companions who were behind him were, run as fast as they could, and a couple of them had gotten on the ladder right behind Alexander, and they were running up the ladder, and Alexander jumped over, and he started fighting, and one of the defenders grabbed the ladder and started to push it so that it would fall. And 2 or 3 guys on the bottom started falling, but one guy was close enough to the top that he just launched himself off the ladder, grabbed the top of the city wall, pulled himself over, rolled in, and started to fight with Alexander. 2 Greeks, completely surrounded in an enemy city. Everyone on the outside went crazy. Apathy, gone. Because you need to know something about Alexander the Great. His men worshiped him. They loved him. They would do anything for him because he led from the front. Every battle they had ever won had the decisive moment. The cavalry with Alexander at the front, his horse riding faster than everyone else, had broken through the Persian line. Before every battle, he had walked from campfire to campfire, talking to the men, sharing their food, cracking jokes with them. Every time after the battle, he would go to the hospitals and the places where the wounded were, putting his hand on them, talking about them, giving them water. Sometimes he would even send messages home to their family members, talking about their heroic deeds on the battlefield. They loved him. And he was in that city. He had gone ahead of them. He had motioned, saying, "Follow me." And they swarmed those walls. They burst through those gates. When they came into the city, there, right at the base of the wall where he had gone over in this large courtyard area, they saw something that terrified them. There was Alexander the Great, his body laid on the ground, blood pooled around him, and that one soldier who had made it in there had one foot planted on either side of his body, was shielding him with the shield in the other hand, fighting like a crazy wildcat, defending his king. You see, if you could sum up Alexander the Great's morals, his core value, it would be a Greek word called arete. And arete means the passionate pursuit of excellence in everything. In fact, in the Greek culture, their most famous story is the story of the Iliad, which is a story that tells about the Trojan horse and Achilles and all that kind of stuff. If you're familiar with it, you know what I'm talking about. But if not, the main hero of the story is Achilles, and he's this super soldier. And Achilles is the epitome of arete. And every single night when Alexander would go to sleep, there was a copy of the Iliad underneath his pillow because he wanted arete in his life. He lived arete. Arete is what sent him running all by himself down to that city. He didn't stop halfway up the ladder and go, are you guys following me? Oh, okay, here they are. He went. True leaders don't care if anyone's following them. They just lead. And that arete was sensed by his men, and they would do anything for him. Now, that's a very different contrast if you look at the leaders of the Persian Empire. There's another famous story where 300 Spartans fight like millions of Persians at the Pass of Thermopylae. And even if you don't know the story, that's okay. The important part of the story is Xerxes the king had an army over 1 million. And these were conscripts and people forced to fight for his army from all across his empire. We're talking Africa, Asia, even parts of Europe, to fight these Greeks. Now, the Greek king was on the front line fighting with them. The Persian king was very well behind the lines, commanding them. In fact, after the army of Persia was defeated 2 days in a row and many Persians and their allies had died, the Persians didn't want to fight these crazy Spartans anymore. So Xerxes literally had people with whips whipping the soldiers into the fight. In the battles that Alexander fought, the king that he fought against, Darius, he was in the center of the line, in the strongest part, surrounded by the immortals, which were like this amazing, super crazy, awesome Persian warriors, in the middle, commanding everything. Both times, when Alexander saw him, he charged his cavalry with him at the front straight towards the king. And one time he got so close, he threw his spear at him and missed. He was so close. Both times the king fled in his magnificent super chariot. So if you had to join an army today, and you could join Alexander or the Persian emperor, which one would you join? See, that's power. Power. What's more powerful? Force or love? Those soldiers being whipped into battle, they went forward, but their hearts weren't into it. Those soldiers following their commander, they didn't care what the odds, they were going to give it everything they had. What's more powerful? You see, when we talk about God, we say he's all powerful. And people think one of those things. It's just the culture we're brought up in, maybe our relationship with our dad, maybe something that happened in our church, but we automatically think one of those things. God is powerful. Don't cross him. Do you see what I did at the first story with Elijah? When he yelled at God, and I said something like, ooh, watch it. Tons of nods. He was like, oh yeah, don't you dare cross God. That's the Persian God, right there. That's it. You see, all of us know, oh, we don't believe that. We love Jesus, we're good. But subconsciously, a lot of us struggle with this other view of God. Like, we know he loves us, but we got to be good enough for him. We know he'll forgive us, but just because Jesus paid the penalty for me, and if he didn't pay it for me, then I'd have to pay it for myself, and that's scary. There's a crazy comic. It's not a comic, it's like a meme or something. It was on social media. And it's this classic picture of Jesus knocking on a door. It's probably in your grandparents' house. This like soft, flowy haired Jesus, and he's leaned forward, and he's like gently knocking on a door. But then there's like these little bubbles of words going back and forth. So Jesus knocks on the door and he says, knock, knock, please let me in so I can save you. And the person on the inside says, save me from what? And Jesus says, save you from what I'm going to do to you if you don't let me in. Now, it's funny, except a lot of people believe that's how God is. And that's why they're not here this morning. Because if that's really God, you're either going to serve him out of fear or throw in the towel and say, I don't want any of that. Choose. Choose this day whom you will serve. A long time ago, in a land far away, there was a legend from the ancient part of Canaan. And in this ancient legend, there is a creator God. And this creator God made the world, and he sends rain and blessings, but there was something wrong with the earth. There was death. And so he left his place in heaven, and he came down, and he fought death in this epic hand-to-hand combat, and he killed death. But in the process, he was mortally wounded, and he died. And 3 days later, he came back to life, because you can't keep a good God down. And he went up to heaven, and from heaven, he pours out his blessings and his love on everyone who obeys him and who sacrifices for him. Because sacrifice means you're all in. Sacrifice proves commitment. So if you're not willing to sacrifice, if it doesn't hurt, then you don't deserve it. That is Baal. That's his story. Baal. You know, the god of Ahab and Jezebel, like that really bad god that wanted you to kill your kids? Baal, that's him. Except you guys didn't know that until the very end. Baal means Lord. El, like Elohim, means Lord. Same name, same characteristics, but one very big difference. Baal says, I demand sacrifice. Prove it. Show me how good you can be. Are you good enough? God says, I am the sacrifice. I proved it. You don't have to be good enough. I'm good enough. That's why Elijah said, choose. He said, if Baal is God, serve him. But if the Lord is Lord, serve him. And the whole nation was there on top of Mount Carmel, in the valleys, watching. And Elijah throws down the challenge. And he says, all right, let's test. Which God from heaven answers with fire, he will be the true God. And we'll all worship him. And everyone's like, okay, makes sense. Ladies first. He lets the prophets of Baal go first. And the prophets of Baal, they get their altar and their wood and their sacrifice, and then they start. They start with their incantations, their little magical spells, and that doesn't work. So they start putting a little passion into it, a little bit of energy, and then they do their dance. And then they're moving and saying things, and they're getting louder and louder. I mean, they're giving away their dignity to this God. They're giving away their energy to this God. And he demands sacrifice. He wants to know, are you truly in? How committed are you? So they prove it with their own blood, cutting themselves, mutilating their own bodies in pain, crying out to him, and nothing happens. So Elijah starts talking trash. He's like, maybe you should yell louder to this all-powerful, all-seeing, all-hearing God of yours. Maybe he's on a trip. You know, he could be in the bathroom. That's awkward, but you know. And nothing happens. All day long, they make fools of themselves. They sacrifice everything to earn his favor, and Baal does nothing. And then when they're spent, they're exhausted, they got nothing left to give, they're like, okay, whatever. It's Elijah's turn. He builds the altar. He puts the wood and the sacrifice on it. And unlike the priests of Baal, who said, get back, he said, come. That invitation is repeated all across the Bible. Come. I got nothing to hide. Come. Let me show you. Come. Let me heal you. So Elijah says, come. And because he doesn't want there to be any doubts, he says, get some water, douse it. So they dump tons of water on it. He's like, do it again. They do it again. Do it again. Everyone's like, we're in the middle of a drought. We don't have water for this. What is he doing? I mean, the whole thing is like waterlogged. There's water everywhere. And then Elijah looks up to heaven and he prays. And his prayer is so awesome. Study it sometime. He doesn't beg. He doesn't plead. He doesn't manipulate. He doesn't say like a magical formula thing. He basically says, God, now's your time. Show them who you are. And then like fire and lightning and this huge pillar just comes, immediately comes out of the sky. Burns up the sacrifice, burns up the wood, burns up the stones, leaves a smoking crater. And Elijah drops the mic. And everyone says, the Lord, he is Lord. But maybe you're like Elijah and me, and maybe you don't get it. That's a great story, right? God, fire! How amazing is that? Whoa, he's real. He's true. That's not the point. What differentiated those two gods? Their character. Which God is true? See, God sent the light, the warmth, to show who he was. And Elijah didn't get it. So back in that cave, he's like, God, where are you? I saw the fire. So God sends fire again, and he sends wind, and he sends earthquakes. And Elijah's like, oh, but you're not there. And then God whispers to him, Elijah, what are you doing here? And then he knows, okay, that's him. See, there's two views of God. One, God is like Baal, like the tyrant, like the emperor who demands obedience. If you cross him, you're going to get in trouble. Another one is the truth of who God is. He loves you. He would never use force. He doesn't want to hurt you. He wants to save you. In fact, he cries when you reject him, like Jesus weeping over Jerusalem right before they killed him. All of us have these two views of God. One of them. And the thing is, when you have one of the views of God, well, it changes everything. So if you think of God like Baal or like an emperor who commands, and you read things in the Bible, it's, what's the opposite word of attraction? Repulsive. Let's talk about the flood. So God created the world, and we messed up. And he looked all across the world, and no one was good, except for Noah. So God said, well, I'm disappointed with myself. I'm just going to kill everyone and start all over. So he makes Noah build a boat. Noah builds a boat. Then the floods come, destroys everyone. I mean, this makes Hitler and Stalin look like saints. You weren't good enough to get on the boat, so you're going to drown. That's the dictator. What about the other one? Oh, wow. So God looks across the whole world. Is there anyone who trusts me? Anyone? Anybody trust me? There's one. Okay, Noah, I need you to build a boat. You don't know how to build a boat? That's fine, I'll teach you. Build a boat. Now for 120 years, I want you to tell everyone why you're building a boat. I want you to give everyone the way to escape the coming destruction. Don't charge any money, make it free, and you preach this same sermon for 120 years. Do you guys want me to go for 120 years up here? 120 years, same sermon. Then the boat's done, and Noah proves with his life that he believes it because he gets on the boat. There's no thunderstorm clouds. There's no sign of anything. And he says, please get on the boat. No one wants a part of it. Then, craziness, animals come out of the woods, like in 2x2s, marching just right up in that boat. Like, oh my goodness, there go 2 elephants. How in the world did this even happen? Look at those birds flying in perfect formation right in the window. Okay, something's going on here. That's mercy. That's God giving them another chance. Then after all the animals come in, Noah stands at the door and says, anybody want to come in? We got plenty of room. Please come in. If you don't, you'll lose your life. This is the only safe place. Please trust God. That's what he said. So no one comes in. And the flood comes, and they die. Because he accepted their rejection. You reject me, I'll kill you. You reject me, I'll respect it and let you go. This is why people aren't coming to our churches. This is why Gandhi said, man, I love your Christ, but don't like your Christians. This is why we think witnessing is about proving everyone else wrong with all of our Bible verses and Ellen White quotes. This is why Christians are just as stressed out and depressed and addicted as everyone else. Because fear cannot transform. But when we put these lenses on, it changes everything. It gives us hope and joy and peace, and that's what everyone wants. It helps us see people not as I'm in, you're out, but as in like, oh my goodness, let me tell you this coolest thing about who God is. He's amazing. So your verse, and I told you this before, guys, you're just doing so good listening to this sermon twice. Your verse for the year is second. Do you guys know what the verse is? No. 1 Peter, thank you. 1 Peter 2:9. And in 1 Peter 2:9, it says, you are a chosen generation. Chosen. That means God chose you. Not to save and let everyone else die, but the verse says you're a chosen generation to take the light into the darkness. So Pathfinders, you are the chosen generation. Church, you are the chosen generation. If you're listening to this anywhere, you have been chosen by God to take the light of who he truly is into a world of darkness. And that verse says, so that you may share his, and in the Greek the word is, love it, arete. So you can share his, some versions say praise, some versions say excellencies, but so you can share his arete with the world. This is not arete. This is force, coercion, intimidation. So that's why Jesus came to this earth. For many, many, many reasons. But one of the reasons was because the Jews were worshiping this God. The sacrifice system, the Sabbath, the diet, all of it was messed up. And so Jesus came and said, all right, the kingdom of heaven is like, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So the disciples saw a blind man one day. And they're like, oh, Lord, how come, who sinned, this man or his mother and father, for him to be cursed with blindness? Because that's what a God like this would do. And Jesus said, nobody sinned because of this. This is to show the glory of God. Check this out. He's going to see something in a minute. Woman caught in adultery, thrown down in front of everyone. She sinned, she must be stoned. Sin demands death. And Jesus said, you've all sinned. And I'm going to pay the price, my death. I don't condemn you. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll use force. I will coerce. I will arrest. I will torture. I will kill. And Jesus said, I'll do whatever it takes. But I will never force. In fact, I will accept arrest, torture. I will be killed. because I love you. Not too long ago, there was a young man who was like crazy in love, and it came time for him to pop the question. So he got a perfect place, kind of a picnic table where they kind of had their first date, and it was next to a lake, and he put out, like the tablecloth and the sparkling grape juice and the cheese and the crackers, and had like a hidden speaker somewhere, and he like took her out there, and she's all like, this is it. And they sit down, and he like whips out a book filled with pictures of all their dates, and he's like, oh, remember we went to the zoo, and oh, there was that time, and she's just like, oh, this is amazing. And then at just the right moment, just at the perfect time, he gets down on one knee, the song is playing, it's their song, he pops out that little box and opens it up, and there's this big, huge ring just sparkling in the sunset. I mean, the sky is this brilliant pink and purple, and the water's reflecting. I mean, it's just perfect. And he's like, will you marry me? And tears come to her eyes. I mean, this is a dream come true. She loves this guy, and she just wants to capture this moment. She wants it to just be ingrained in her mind forever. And so she just pauses for a minute just to take it all in, the sunset and him and the music and the ring and the water and oh my goodness. And she's just like soaking it in, so happy. But he misunderstands her hesitation. He's like, she should be saying yes by now. And his mind starts going a mile a minute. He's like, wait, we're perfect for each other. Like, we are supposed to be together, I know. Like, we like all the same movies, we like the same food, she loves my feet. Like, this is it. Like, God has told me she's the one. She has to marry me. Everything is pivots on this moment right here. I know better. I know. She has to do. All right. So he's there with the ring, and she's just kind of. And so he reaches back behind his jacket, and he pulls out a pistol. And he says, babe, I'm just going to ask one more time. Love cannot be forced. This doesn't work. That girl who was filled with so much love, who was ready to give everything to this man, as soon as he pulled out a pistol, what happened? Fear. She'll say yes. She'll do whatever he wants, but she will not love him. You see, love says, I love you. I love you so much, but if you say no, I'll respect that. That's the gospel. I've got a little video clip to show you. And when you're looking at it, I want you to just imagine, which pair of glasses is Jesus wearing? So true leaders are out front. True leaders sacrifice for their people. They don't ask it the other way around. When we put on the right glasses, everything changes. The law changes, Sabbath changes, our sins change, Jesus coming back changed, the three angels' message changes, everything changes. And we see hope where we saw despair. We see love where we saw condemnation. And we see a God who says, come. When we see this God, it changes us. And then we do what we were created to do. So today for our closing hymn, we're going to sing, "Oh Lord, You're Beautiful." Because worship isn't about what we do here, sing a song, sit, stand, pray. It's about what we do here, who we singing to, who we praying to, who we communing with. So when you sing this song, don't sing it for the people around you. Sing it to God. "Oh Lord, You're beautiful. Your face is all I seek." And when your love comes down here, your grace abounds to me. Let's sing for him. Oh Lord, Lord, You're beautiful. One more time, stand up. Oh Lord, You're beautiful. May the God of hope, may the God of love, may the God of arete and acceptance speak to you in that still small voice. May He help us let go of the lies that we believe about Him and ourselves so that we can take the true gospel to the world. Jesus, we love you. And as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Amen.